Hi and welcome. I'm Taryn and thank you for joining me in this Pelvic Health workshop, which is the first workshop in the Body Conscious series. This workshop is going to be a blend of science meets soul, because that is how I work, and the integration of the two is where I sense we become more holistic in our approach towards pelvic health. So I'll talk first around some of the anatomy of the pelvic floor and the deep core and its functions, so a little bit of physiology. But I also want to invite your openness and curiosity around the more energetic and emotional side and aspects of our body as well, because I really do believe they are so interconnected and so interrelated that they cannot be separated from one another. And I do sense, both from my experience in my own body and from my experience with the women that I work with, it's the separation of the physical to the rest of ourselves, our emotional and spiritual body, but also the separation of this part of our body to the rest of our entire body, which makes it really challenging for us to access our full potential around pelvic health and positive pelvic health. So I'll talk first around the deep core and then go into the pelvic floor muscles, and then we'll go through some movement practices, some breath work and some body connection practices so that you can begin to explore your own body and become curious around your own pelvic health. So the deep core is a group of muscles which provide our foundation for movement. So the core, the deep core, is what gives us a really solid and stable base to then move our arms and legs and our entire body from. Energetically, the stable base and being connected to the stable base and center of ourselves is what I sense gives us this, confidence in moving through our world being ourselves, rather than trying to fit ourselves into a box and be something that perhaps somebody else expects us to be or we feel that we should be. So the muscles of the deep core are the diaphragm at the top, which is our breathing muscle, our deep transverse abdominal muscles, which wrap around our body like a corset. At the back, we have our deep spinal support muscle, the multifidus muscles. And then at the base, we have a group of muscles which make up the pelvic floor muscles. And the pelvic floor muscles are what create the base to our pelvic bowl. So the pelvic floor muscles, there's two layers, a superficial and a deeper layer, and they are a group of muscles that attach from the pubic bone at the front of the pelvis to the tailbone at the back and to the sit bones on either side. And the main roles of the pelvic floor are to help to support the pelvic organs, so to provide that lift and that sling support for the bladder, the bowel and the uterus. They have a significant and important role in helping us to maintain continence, so stopping unwanted leakage from the bladder or the bowel. And they also have an important role in sexual function, in particularly orgasm. So it's important to know that the muscles of the pelvic floor is not the entire pelvic floor. There's also connective tissue, nerves, sphincters. So right now I'm talking about the muscles only themselves. So when we talk around pelvic health and some of the concerns that we have with pelvic health, I feel like the missing piece that we have is there's a practitioner and you, client, patient, individual, and often what it is the practitioner telling you this is what's wrong with your body, this is what we need to fix in the body, and this is how you do it. My approach and my understanding of what I feel works better through experience and experimental practice is the practitioner has me, I have some skills and I have some awareness and some specialized knowledge that I can share and show with you. But you ultimately have the experience of being in your body and your ability to sense your own body. And our body is very intelligent and holds this enormous amount of wisdom. So you can just think of something simple like, say you've got a sore neck and a bit of a headache, and intuitively you might put your hands there, give it a little bit of a massage, you might lay down and have a rest, might take a warm bath or a warm shower, and it's these things that we automatically are drawn towards doing that help to ease that pain and that muscle tension. And I believe that this is how we work within all of our body. As a physio, often what we're teaching and sharing with clients is not stuff that's new or that they haven't already experimented with doing. We're reinforcing and saying, yes, that's the right way to go about it. This is what the evidence and the research says, and giving some guidance and perhaps giving some more pieces of information that we perhaps didn't know simply intuitively, but it's the mix of those two that give us that optimal wellness and well-being. And what I really trust and believe is that when you begin to become curious about this space in your body and more connected with this space in your body, you can guide yourself towards optimal or positive pelvic health. So the disconnect is often what women experience, is this disconnect from this space in their body, and a disappointment, a dissatisfaction, a disembodiment, and often a fear of being in this space in our body. And there's so many reasons for that. It's from when we're a young age. It's the culture that we live in where we wrong women's bodies, and we even, for example, if you think about your first experience with your menstrual cycle and what that felt like to you and how connected you are to your cycle, are you inconvenienced by your cycle? Do you feel like it's a burden and a bother? If we feel inconvenienced by this part of our body and we feel like it's a burden, a bother, we're too hormonal, it makes us too erratic, it's too unpredictable, all of those things, we begin to feel like we're working against our body rather than with our body. And that's the thing with this more Western approach of clinician, practitioner, these are the things that are wrong, this is what you need to do to fix. It's almost that reinforcement of the disconnect with your feminine body. Someone else is the expert and you need to follow what they're saying. Whereas if we can actually make it more about self-inquiry and body inquiry and getting to know your own body's language, what it becomes more about then is, this is sensing my body, this is how I'm feeling physically, energetically, emotionally, and I'm going to work and respond with that and to that rather than feeling like I'm working against my body. So it's about really becoming connected with this space and curious about this space and not wronging this space in your body. We experience significant trauma whether it be just the wronging that we have of women's bodies. You know, menstrual cycles are gross and disgusting. Period blood is icky and new. You know, you're not thin enough, you're not attractive enough, you're wearing too revealing clothing, that's not revealing enough, you know, all the things that go on. So that's part of the pain that we experience. Alongside of that, of course, there is sexual trauma, but what is perhaps less recognized is birth trauma, surgical trauma, and medical trauma as well. So medical trauma even is this medicalized and clinicalization of our bodies that also reinforces this message that your body is wrong. You need to go on the pill, you need to change your menstrual cycle, or you need to, maybe it's just even an examination like a pap smear, for example, which feels really confronting and really overwhelming and wasn't attended to with you being the center and you being in control of your body and you being able to create some boundaries and creating a safe space for you to experience this part of your body. And it's all of these things, and of course we all have our own unique experiences, but bit by bit over our life cycle, even then menopause shows up and that's wrong, and you know, you need to control that, and it's like we just reinforce over and over again to women that their body is wrong, it's shameful, and we disconnect more and more from this space. And so for pelvic health and for full body health, it's about coming back into this space and becoming curious about this space and feeling really safe to do that. So a really great question for yourself is, what would have you feel safe to begin to explore this part of your body? And I sense that for a lot of women, one of the answers, and not the whole answer, but is knowing that your body isn't wrong and that we can work alongside of it rather than against it. And that your emotional and energy that's held here, your emotional responses, and then the energetic response and the physical response are all important parts to explore, and that we don't need to separate the physical body with the energetic and emotional and spiritual you, that we can experience it in this wholeness as well. So I'll talk a little bit around when we're moving through these practices, the emotional or energetic, what I sense, but what I sense in my body and what it represents to me is going to be different perhaps for you. And so one of my biggest, I'm going to call it a message, is that you are the expert in your body, and that you can trust your communication with your body. So what you sense and what you feel this means for you or represents for you, trust that, because you can't get it wrong. So for this first part, I'm actually going to take down my high-waisted leggings because it's really about helping us to relax and let go through this space. So for positive pelvic health, we need good pelvic floor strength, but we also need to be able to relax and let go through the deep core. So we'll begin just by being in a 4-point kneeling position. And the first thing to try, or I invite you to try, is to just let the belly hang and let go. And so for a lot of women, this can feel very challenging. And it's because we reinforce so often that you need, for posture, good posture, pulling through your waist. When we're going through our exercise routines, we're always being told, pull your belly button towards your spine. We're embarrassed about bloating and any excess abdominal weight that we feel like we might be carrying. And so to do this, to relax and let go, can often be really challenging. And this is also a space where women tend to hold a lot of tension pelvically and abdominally as well. So you might know that you feel like you get a lot of upper shoulder tension. Sometimes women experience equally or even more in this part of their body. So to relax and let that go can feel quite vulnerable. And I sense too that relaxing through this space and just softening our need for control is that energetic, soften our need for control, soften into our vulnerability and soften into our own softness, because that as women is often wrong as well. Like, you're too sensitive, don't be sensitive, don't be soft, don't have some of those, what would be considered perhaps more feminine qualities, even though we have such strength in our softness. So just being here, and then also as you're here, I invite you to sense around the throat and the jaw, and just allowing yourself to soften through there, and perhaps breathing in through the nose. Now as you breathe in through the nose, allow the breath to travel all the way down the body, deep into the pelvic bowl. And as you breathe in, just allowing or sensing the pelvic floor just softening, opening, just letting the belly hang. As you do that, stay in a 4-point kneeling position for as long as feels comfortable. But I just want to talk to you for one moment, this connection around the voice and the pelvic bowl. And so the muscles of the pelvic floor and the vocal cords have a very similar anatomical features, so they're similar patterns and shapes. On an energetic level, there is a strong connection to our center and our voice. And so put really simply, when we're really connected to our center, to the truth of who we are, and we can, feel really solid in that foundation of ourselves, we can speak our truth and we can share that with the world. But when we're shut off from who we really are, when we're trying to be something that we're not, or when we feel like we need to be a particular way or have a particular lifestyle or way of living, we shut ourselves off from our own center and our own truth, and therefore we shut our voice off from speaking our truth from our center. And where you can see that connection through this space in your body really easily is, well, there's a few ways actually, but a lot of women who have pelvic pain and pelvic tension, perhaps a hypertonic or high tone tension in their pelvic floor, often carry also tension through their jaw and have symptoms of teeth grinding, clenching as well. So they go hand in hand with one another often. We can see the visceral response, for example, of childbirth, where we have those really deep, guttural, visceral sounds, where we're like that deep humming, groaning voice that we create here, that also helps to create softness and openness through the pelvic floor as well. So we can see some of the interrelationships with this space in our body, and over time, as you become to explore your body, you might see how, as you become more connected with this space and more grounded in this space in your body, that perhaps you then start to speak more of your own truth and feel more empowered to do that. So moving on, we're going to lay down onto our backs and just placing the feet on the floor and the knees bent. And as you come into this position, make any adjustments that feel comfortable for you. And then resting the hands wherever feels comfortable, no particular place that they need to be. But just bringing some rocking to the pelvis forwards and backwards. And just noticing how fluid and how easy, how supple this might feel, or how challenging it may be. Just to invite that smoothness and that softness. Perhaps imagining like a silky scarf or a really flowing, gentle flowing body of water. Just connecting to this space in your body. Resting somewhere in the middle. And sensing into the sit bones, you can touch them and find them if you need to just bring some awareness and pressure there. And then just imagining with your sit bones, you're drawing little circles in one direction. And again, just offering some smoothness and softness here. And just using this as a time to connect in with this space in your body and enjoy some subtle movement. And then taking them circles into the opposite direction. And stopping somewhere in the middle. And then feeling into the sacrum as it presses onto the base of the floor or on your mat. And sensing the pressure of the sacrum, just imagining it's like the base of a bowl, and you're using the base and the rim of that bowl to clock around. And so you're inviting each side and point of the sacrum to become in contact with the earth beneath, the floor beneath. And as you're doing this very gentle and subtle movement, and tuning into the feminine body, the feminine energy within. Again, offering that fluidity and that softness through your body. And then if you find a section that feels a little bit clunky, a little bit less fluid, perhaps giving a little bit of time and attention to that little piece of the circular motion, and then continuing on. We take that into the opposite direction. And these movements are really about creating relationship with this part of your body and an intention to become more aware of this part of your body. And as you do this, and again, if you find that more rigid or less smooth space, just spending some time. But as you do that, we don't need to offer any wronging of our movement and how we feel in our body. Just notice how it feels. And then again, stopping and coming somewhere to the center. Then I offer you to step your feet a little wider and let the knees fall into one another so that you can really relax through the inner thighs. And so perhaps, you can see that intuitively, or just a natural response for me is to invite a little bit of softness through touch. So you can invite some softness through touch there if that feels good for you. The other thing that might feel really nice is to grab each of the buttocks and to really pull through the buttocks and create some separation just for a few moments, just to offer them to soften and let go. If you find that you hold a lot of tension in the pelvis, often that stretch and separation of the buttocks feels really beautiful for women, and is again another thing that they often do intuitively, but if you haven't, perhaps something to experiment with. And then releasing the hands, and then bring the hands to rest wherever it feels good for you. So it could be one hand heart, one hand womb space, both hands onto the abdomen, both hands onto the pelvis, whatever feels good. And spend some time just focusing on the breath and sensing how those muscles of the deep core respond to our breath. So perhaps closing the eyes and just listening to the guidance of my voice. Begin to breathe in and out through the nose and just sense the breath as it comes in through the nose and down the back of the throat and into the lungs. And as you breathe and following and tracing with that breath, feel the rib cage open and expand beautifully with each breath. And then sensing that softening and recoil with each exhale. Simply tuning into how the body moves with the breath. And we take our awareness a little lower into the body, into the abdomen. And as you breathe now, bring your attention to how the belly bulges, softens, and allows for the breath. And then noticing that very subtle and gentle recoil of the belly button towards the spine with each breath out, but without offering any particular contraction or trying to control the experience. Allow your body to simply flow with the breath and notice how your body is responding to the breath. Bring your awareness now to the pelvic floor, from the pubic bone at the front to the coccyx at the back, and the sit bones on either side. And as you breathe in, sensing the breath all the way into the pelvic bowl, and sensing, if you can, and becoming curious really, how the pelvic floor moves with the breath. With each breath in, the softening, the opening, and the allowing for the breath. And as you breathe out, perhaps a very gentle recoil and a drawing inwards and upwards of the pelvic floor with each breath out. So breathing in, sensing the opening, the softening, the allowing for the breath. And each breath out, that very gentle, subtle recoil. And so here, no effort or forced contraction required. Simply noticing how the body is moving with the breath. I'm going to try some pelvic floor contractions now. And so one of the best cues for a pelvic floor contraction is to squeeze around the anus. We know that the more simple the cue is, the more likely you are to have the muscles contract more correctly. So, squeezing around the anus, we're going to begin with maximal contraction. We do try and keep relaxed through the thoracic cage, through the jaw and the mouth, through the belly. The lower abdomen will generally tend to draw inwards as well as that deep transverse muscle recoils and contracts with the pelvic floor. And then fully relax and let that go. And as you fully relax, breathe into the pelvic bowl, doing a deep breath and inviting the breath all the way deep into the base of the body, into the pelvic bowl. And again, maximal pelvic floor contraction. Just noticing how it feels to contract this space in your body. To bring your awareness and your attention here. And trying to maintain that gentle breathing pattern. And then fully release and let go. Again, a few deep pelvic bowl breaths. And And again, strong squeeze and contraction, full maximal contraction of the pelvic floor. Trying to stay soft through the rib cage, soft through the neck and the shoulders and the throat. Fully release and let go. Breathing deeply into the pelvic bowl. Feel the softening of the pelvic floor with each breath in. And this time we're going to do a halfway gentle lift of the pelvic floor. We're going to hold it for a longer duration. So you'll notice in the PDF document that I sent out alongside this workshop, where I talk around the strength principles, the endurance, and how do we increase endurance of the pelvic floor. And yes, we're still holding at that 50% contraction, and also coordination. So there's different aspects of how we can focus our control of the pelvic floor muscles and where we might need to pay our attention. So not everybody needs to focus on strength. Perhaps it's coordination, perhaps it's endurance, perhaps it's softening and relaxation. And let go and release fully that contraction. Breathing into the base of the body, into the pelvic floor. And lastly, we're going to do some quicker contractions and just listening to the cues of my voice and trying to follow along. So squeeze, release, squeeze, release, squeeze, hold, slow release, squeeze, release, squeeze, release, squeeze, release, slow squeeze, fast release, slow squeeze, fast release, squeeze, release, fully relax, fully let go. Breathe into the pelvic bowl. Then I offer you to simply bring your awareness to the pelvis, the pelvic bowl, pelvic floor, perhaps to the energy of womb space. And just contemplating for a few moments, perhaps what this space in your body means for you, how connected you feel to this space in your body, how it's feeling energetically, emotionally. And perhaps asking yourself what you require or how you would like to nourish this part of your being and your body. And then perhaps finishing with 3 really beautiful, deep pelvic bowl breaths. Imagining feeling from the pubic bone to the hip bones, all the way into the sit bones. Really deep breath, filling this entire pelvic bowl. And you might like to sigh the breath out as you release. And then when you're ready, begin to bring some movement into your body in any way that feels good for you. And then slowly, in your own time, bring yourself back to seated position, or perhaps even staying where you were laying on your back, whatever feels good for you. So, to finish this part of our workshop, this first workshop in this series, I really offer you this as a practice to become curious about your body and really knowing that there is no way that you can get this wrong. There's no wrong way to be curious about your body and what feels good, and asking yourself, what feels good to connect with this space in my body, and how can I respond to my body in my movement through my life. So whether that mean your physical movement practices, whether that mean inviting some more creativity to your life and your lifestyle, maybe it is more tuning into your menstrual cycle and responding to the different phases of your cycle rather than masking with medications and caffeine and sugar and trying to push on. It's about becoming gentle with ourselves and kind with ourselves and creating a relationship with the pelvic bowl, our pelvic floor, and this space in our body, and doing it in a really kind, self-compassionate way, very gently, and most importantly, in a way that feels safe and a way that feels nourishing to you as an individual. So remember that I'm here to support you through this series. So if you have any questions or if you'd like to share your experience with me, we can chat either on Facebook, through Instagram, or on Voxer. Some women like to type and some women do like the voice message. I generally have quite a bit to say, not always, and depending on, life and lifestyle, voice message suits me. But don't feel pressured that you have to send me a voice message. If you want to do it through a typed message, then that is absolutely fine as well. So, thank you for joining me. I do really appreciate you trusting me and allowing me to share this experience with you. And I will speak with you during the week if you would like to share. Otherwise, we'll see each other in our next workshop. Bye.